Good morning, bitches. Yes, you got to start your day with a little bit of an insult to make sure that you're tough enough to handle all the other shit that's going to fly your way on a Monday morning. This is the Gareth Cliff Show on our new home, The Real Network, and we are coming to you live out of Sandton, Johannesburg. Very exciting. I have my collaborator and evil mastermind, Leigh-Ann Mull, here with me today. Isn't that great? How was your weekend?
Yeah, all good. You briefly said earlier that yours was really, really busy.
Oh, my God.
So, I mean, even if I had something to tell you, I think I'm going to have to leave space for yours.
Well, okay, I'm going to give you the précis version because otherwise we'll be here all morning. And who wants to hear about someone's weekend in minute detail when they weren't part of it? It's like those people who pitch up and start telling you about their holiday and then show you every picture on their phone of every boring thing that they saw. And really, most people's holidays are boring. You know why? You weren't there.
Yeah.
Right. So I have a very good friend who's out here from Texas. I mentioned the other day, he's my cleverest friend. Like, we've known each other since varsity. And he came out here for work. His long-suffering wife and kids are in Texas waiting for him. But he managed to spend some time with us. So there was a whole group of us who were at varsity together. And we managed to have like a pretty good reunion of kinds on a Friday. And he stayed with me on Friday night and last night. But I was really pleased that I could get his visit to coincide with the visit of the very brilliant Eric Weinstein, who's in South Africa. This guy is just a different level of smart. And to see the two of them, as I did last night, talking at this dinner, he especially delayed his flight back, my friend, so he could spend time with Eric. And to see the two of them talking and kind of figuring out very complex things made me very happy.
I remember we spoke about this last week and we said, okay, so you're getting them into a room together. Where do they start when their minds are so full of stuff? Did they just start casually? So
it's so funny. I said to Eric, because I interviewed him yesterday, and that interview will be available soon on the podcast party. I'll give you all the details. And by the way, I interviewed Zubi. For those people who are interested, Zubi is a rapper and a very big free thinker. He's from the UK, originally born in Nigeria. He grew up in Saudi Arabia. I mean, what a fascinating guy this is.
Sure.
That interview is available also on the podcast party. I will tweet out the link a little bit later on, but you can go and find it in my feed if you're interested. Well worth listening to Zubi. Very, very talented guy with some interesting insights into identity and things like that. Anyway, I interviewed Eric yesterday, and I said to him at the beginning, look, I don't get nervous about interviewing people anymore. I've done a lot of these things, and I've met some phenomenal people. It's the best job in the world in some respects. It's the university of us, right? So if you listen to the show, you get to meet all these amazing people the same way I do. Get into their heads, hear them explain their ideas, hear their stories, a little bit of emotion every now and then. But mostly it's kind of cerebral. I said to him at the beginning, listen, dude, I'm nervous to interview you because I feel like everything I'm going to talk about is going to be so boring to you. Anyway, he immediately put me at ease. And then last night at this dinner, he starts off by saying, does anyone know a really good dirty limerick?
Oh.
And I was like, yes, I do know some dirty limericks. So I shall share my opening limerick. Well, it wasn't my opening because everybody did one. And there were about 14 of us at dinner. It's amazing how resourceful people are when it comes to remembering limericks.
Well, did most of them start with "there was a woman from"?
Yeah, a lot of them did.
Yeah.
I mean, my favorite one is there once was a girl from Devizes who had tits of two different sizes.
Oh, yes.
One was quite small, almost nothing at all, but the other was big and won prizes.
Yes.
So after they'd all done theirs, someone said to Pumi and Muzi Kuzwayo, who were there, don't you know a limerick in Zulu? And they said, no. And I said, I do. But not in Zulu, but it's a Zulu-related limerick. It goes like this. It was taught to me by my one ex-girlfriend's father. There once was a girl called Unati who went to a fancy dress party. She said to her Reggie, you can play around the edgy, but I kona fagalo pagat. Right? So I thought that was quite good.
Yeah, a nice comeback.
Anyway, I mean, yeah, so things flowed. It was very good. And after that, people relax and they start talking. And this friend of mine has an autistic son, and so does Eric. So they bonded on that front and talked about AI and all kinds of cool stuff. And there was a little bit of politics, which was nice because people wanted to talk politics and quite a lot about South Africa. And he says, and I agree with him, South Africa is tremendously important. I mean, we have things to teach the rest of the world from our own history and the way that we've dealt with things. And we have things to learn, and we can learn them faster than the rest of the world. But what I found fascinating is that Eric and his wife have just spent 2 weeks on St. Helena, which is this barren island. Well, I thought it was barren, it clearly isn't. This island that's the second most remote place on Earth. So it will take you longer to get there from anywhere than it will to get to almost any other place from anywhere. So, I mean, it's where they imprisoned Napoleon for his final years. He died there at Longwood House. But St. Helena is very, very interesting. And I didn't think it would be. I thought, why are these people there? Anyway, they weren't affected by COVID at all in St. Helena.
Oh, right.
They basically didn't allow any ships to dock. You had a quarantine period of 2 weeks, but no one wore masks. They didn't bother. They partied all the way through. And he said the fact that you South Africans don't know about St. Helena, you don't travel there, is a disgrace. He said it's amazing.
So wait, it's a remote
Here we go, Leigh-Ann.
Overseas territory.
Leigh-Ann, the researcher, has taken over. Go on.
Volcanic and tropical island, South Atlantic Ocean, 1,874 kilometers west of mainland Africa.
Right. Two things you can do to get there. One, very unpleasant. The other one, sometimes fraught with danger. So it's really locked off from the rest of the world in some ways. Long before we have to go to Mars, we must go to St. Helena, basically.
So we're obviously either boating or flying there.
Right. There's only one flight that goes there. I think it's once a week from Johannesburg. So you have to pass through Johannesburg to get there. They have an airport, which was only built in 2020. It's finished in 2020. Before that, there was a mailing ship, a British mailing ship. Went there every 2 months. So
what just for mail?
Yeah, and before that was every 6 months. So if you found yourself in St. Helena, you were there for 6 months.
Wow.
There was no getting off for another 6 months. You know, I mean, fascinating place. So apparently the climate there is variable as hell. You could literally be in the Scottish mountains at some point, and then you drive for 10 minutes and you're in a tropical rainforest. You drive another 10 minutes and you're in desert. So even though it's small, there's a lot that happens there. I mean, it's the size of San Francisco, I was told.
Okay.
And truly an interesting place. Like, there's another thing that's interesting about it, which I don't want to steal all the thunder of the Eric Weinstein interview, but he said it's also kind of a post-identity place, because it's ironic talking about this after I discussed identity with Zuby, because everyone is like coffee colored and no one is uptight about slavery because their ancestors were slaves, but also the masters. So it's all like mixed up, and it could be a glimpse of what the future looks like. So really fascinating place. And therefore, I think justifiably something that's now on my agenda.
Yeah, absolutely. And quite a big population, 4,439.
Right.
I thought there were going to be about 3 people there.
Well, I think that those ones probably all related.
Okay.
So bringing in some fresh genes would probably be and the average age there is old, like in their 70s, because the young people just leave. And then they come back when they have lots of money. Oh. So interesting, right?
It's fascinating.
Okay, so that was last night and yesterday during the day. Saturday, I again dragged this friend of mine from America, and then another friend of mine. She came up from KZN, and they were jamming on Friday night with instruments. Now, this very clever friend of mine can play any instrument. Like you put him, he was sitting in front of a keyboard and started playing, but like properly, like a classical pianist. And then he picked up a bass guitar, and then he was playing the bass while doing the drums with his feet.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like talent. You talk about people who are referred to as a polymath or, a Renaissance man. This guy really is like that. And again, I'm so lucky that I've got smart friends like this. I honestly feel very stupid sometimes around them, but I'm in wonder.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter to me that I'm stupid. I'm so happy to be around people who are truly brilliant that I don't mind being the dumbest man in the room. In fact, if I'm the dumbest man in the room, it's like I like being the ugliest person in the room. It means everyone else is amazing, right? Yeah. So then I'm in the right room.
But also it's nice to have a certain type of dumb, a little bit of dumb. It gets you through life. You don't think too deeply about things. I always found like super fit people who really train hard and work on their bodies and it's all they're into. Mm-hmm. Sometimes I wished that I had their kind of mindset because you don't think, are these calories really burning off? What did I eat yesterday? How am I going to do this today? Why is this sore? They just do. They get up and do.
Yeah. Look, I suppose you could argue there's that kind of idea that people who are really severely mentally impaired are sometimes the happiest people because they're not
blissful ignorance.
Yeah, they're not thinking about stressing themselves out about everything and worrying about tomorrow. Or like, am I doing the right thing? Am I successful? Am I a failure? They're like, give you a hug when they see you, and then they're like, okay.
It's like my aunt. She had a fit when she was younger, a little child from whooping cough, and they lived on the mines, so she didn't get to hospital on time. And
right, so oxygen deprivation.
Right, a traumatic brain injury, basically. She's now she's nearly 70, and she's absolutely happy. Death doesn't bother her at all.
Yeah.
She said to me the other day, my budgie was lying on the bottom of the bird tray for a while last night.
Right.
And I thought it's going to die before I wake up. And it did. It died. I said, where is it?
Yeah.
And I said, did you bury it somewhere? She said, no, I'll show you. While she was walking to Spa, she just tossed it into somebody's ground cover.
So she was fine.
And she got out and checked. She said, the ants are getting to it now.
And she moved on, right?
She's absolutely. She went and got another two.
Listen, there's something to be said for it. So, everything is a trade-off. And this is what the great Thomas Sowell, who's probably America's foremost economist and certainly one of the great intellectuals who is still alive. He's in his 90s now. I mean, Thomas Sowell, by anyone's account, should have been president of the United States, but he would never have gone into politics. Just so clear about everything. He always says everything in life is a trade-off. There are no such things as binary options. If you want lots of this, you get a little of that. If you want a little of this, you get a lot of that, and so on. So I think that's probably the way to look at things. Plus, there's some thoroughly useful insights that I kind of got from just listening to some people over the course of the last 2 or 3 days. The friends who we went to, I've spoken sometimes about my friend who is a subsistence advocate. So he advocates in law, but only enough to pay his bills. The rest of his time he spends gaming, and with his son and his wife. And so he works. He's very good at this. He can apportion exactly in his head how much advocating he has to do, and then the rest of the time he just fucks around.
Yeah.
Sounds
good.
The rest of us would be like, well, how much more money can I make? And how much more could I do work-wise? He's like, no, that's just my way to make money. And he and his wife are just very inspiring people because they have raised this extremely bright little child. And the two of them have a room in their house. This is where we were like jamming on Friday night. A room underneath their house, which is like a party room. I mean,
not a sex dungeon.
No, it's a party room. It's like got disco lights and music and speakers and instruments and like all kinds of cool shit. And it's always there ready to go. It can also be a cinema if that's what you want it to be. But I mean, they're just very odd people. And again, I'm just so lucky that I've got these very odd friends in my life who I could never spend a minute around any of them and go, yeah, that's enough for a couple of weeks. It's always exciting to be around them. So yeah, very, very stimulating weekend. If I'm a little bit manic today, that's why. I see Mapadima says here, I'm not so excited about the Wednesday holiday. Yes, we have a Wednesday holiday because it's during the week. Well, you'll be excited when you finished a long day on Tuesday and you're like, I can take tomorrow off and do nothing. Did you do anything to mark Freedom Day on Saturday?
No, in fact, I forgot about it until the news started coming in and the news clips and what Cyril Ramaphosa had said. And obviously everything's completely politically laced and politically charged at the moment.
So you listened to what Cyril Ramaphosa said? That's interesting.
No, I mean, I just saw
I don't know anyone who listened to him.
No, I didn't. Certainly
that would have been a downer
on
an otherwise great weekend, right?
I just saw, typed out little bits of what he'd been saying, and I was really disinterested. But that's only when I realized that it was actually Freedom Day. Something wrong with us not benefiting from a Saturday public holiday.
Yeah, it
Give
feels
us
like
Friday,
it does feel like you've been cheated a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Because normally a public holiday, even for the people who don't give a damn about the historical significance of what you're trying to do on that day, what it means, even them, they're like, well, if we get the public holiday, then we'll maybe spend a minute thinking about it. And that's a lot for government to ask you to spend a whole minute of your day. But they could have at least given us the day. Friday, as you say, that would have been nice. I did notice, and it's worth remarking just for a second, about the actual relevance of Freedom Day. And 30 years after that hell of an important day, where I remember I was in high school, and I remember the queues and this enormous, meaningful, important activity that everyone took part in. Everyone who could vote. I was too young to vote. And I remember what a big deal it was for people on that day. And then I think, there are people growing up now who just couldn't be bothered to vote.
So apathetic.
I'm like, okay, we've discussed this. I'm not going to gild the lily now and go over it again. I had a rant last week about how they should all just be like shipped off to Antarctica or something because they're just ungrateful. And you think about the sacrifices. And I saw last night at our dinner one of Madiba's granddaughters, who, and we talked about this a little bit, because we are so quick to just move on. And like now we find new things to bitch about, right? So it's the electricity, and it's the water, and it's how bad our education system is, and how little progress we've made here or there or anywhere else. And I'm certainly not doing an ANC good story to tell. And by the way, we've got Panyaza Lesufi in on Thursday to represent the ANC in our long litany of political parties. We'll get to that with Pumi later this week. But I do think it's worth taking stock. Like, we really have an extraordinary story in this country. And just because we have short memories and we are now so entitled as a nation, I'm not saying as individuals, it feels to me like we've just got to take a deep breath and look at how far we've come, realize that we are not the shittest place on earth, because some people really believe this is the shittiest place on earth. And I think it is an extremely difficult place to live if you have no money. I think it is one of the toughest places in not just the world as it is right now, but in time to live, because there's this added ugliness, which we've never had to deal with before, where you may be poor and you may not have anything, but now you get to see what you're missing out on, which is cruel, right? So I think that's something we don't take any stock of. I think it can be tremendous happiness in poverty if you don't know that you're poor. I mean, like, there was a stage when I was a kid where we didn't have a whole lot.
Yeah.
But I could roam freely, and I could build swings in trees, and I didn't feel hard done by just because we didn't have material wealth. But I think it's much harder when you're seeing, yachts and planes and holidays and celebrities and all this nonsense on your phone all the time. And that's your feed, and you're living in squalor. I think that's extra hard.
Yeah.
But we're not the worst place. There are many, many worse places. And that's not to say that we aren't good either. There are some things that we do extremely well. And I think we deserve a little bit of credit for that. And 30 years after democracy first came in a real way to this country, take a moment to just have a little bit of, joy.
Pride.
A little bit of pride.
Yeah.
And I'm not a nationalist. You know this. I'm probably not even a patriot anymore. That's saying something because I used to be. I still can find it in me to be proud of this place and to celebrate the things that we do well. I think it's worth just a little reflection, No,
100%.
Don't want to go too far down that road, but there we are. And you say your weekend was just nothing. No pressure.
Yeah, I'm really battling to get the work-life balance thing right. 7 months into a new job and still going full steam ahead.
You know what I think you need? I want to organize you a workplace romance.
I don't know if I can handle anything more.
Come on, Leigh-Ann. Imagine getting to the office every day, and there's some guy you're really into. Come on. No?
I don't know if I want the extra stuff.
All right, well, I tried. She's definitely devoid of feelings. She's given up. She's shut down the shop.
No,
She's shut down the shop.
Not.
She's decided it's all closed. Cobwebs.
I promise. In fact, I sat down with my brother about 2 weeks ago, and I said to him, I think I might be ready to start look at maybe dating.
Oh, this is a development.
Yeah.
Tell me more.
I just feel like things have, almost like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. I've got the basics sorted out now that I was just kind of trading water before.
Sure.
And those things are now sorted out. And you naturally start moving on to the next need, the next tier of the pyramid. And yeah, I was actually also talking to my cousin 2 days ago. She like me, has been single most, for the last few years. And we were remembering that in China, you have that service where you can hire someone just to cuddle with.
Right.
Nothing more is required or expected. And at first she said, oh, gross. And then I said, no, imagine someone saying to you, like, how was your day? What have you been up to? You look great today. What are your plans for tomorrow? Just because you end up missing out on those things a little bit.
Oh, well, don't worry. We've got the audience to fill that gap for us. Listen to what Zach says. Gareth, my 9-year-old, grew up with me watching the Gareth Cliff Show and now just asked, Daddy, why is the man looking old now? Fuck. Do they see what we don't? Because she said the same with me in the past few weeks. Zach, just tell your 9-year-old to shut the fuck up. All right, mind her own fucking business.
Yeah, but it's good. She needs to learn that that's what happens. That's life.
Leigh-Ann is beautiful, by the way, says Mapelo, and very funny as well.
Oh.
Yeah, so you get a compliment. That's nice. Ricky says, I've been in Australia for almost 2 years now. One thing I can say is the South African people, the culture, the patriotism, unmatched. Those are the things that I miss every day. Okay.
Yeah, there's something entirely unique about South Africa that you can't find anywhere else. This shared experience.
So my friend Charles said he's been doing some work here for one of the big corporations, and he said this is a much more evolved and friendly place when it comes to diversity and people actually meeting each other as human beings and exchanging greetings. He said he walked into a boardroom last week, and again, sometimes it's good to have a fresh perspective from someone who doesn't live here. This is where I say we're not the shittest place, right? He said, in America, there's such tension now around race, culture, language, ethnicity, immigration, patriotism, the Constitution, politics. If you're a Trump supporter, you can't sit at a table with a Biden supporter. And he said he went into a boardroom last week, and he said people hug each other, they greet, they know each other's names, they know each other's kids' names, they talk like old friends. And he said that just does not happen in America right now.
Mm.
And he's like American now. He's not South African anymore. And I thought that was a really cool observation. But to go back to your thing about like someone to sleep next to or to ask how your day was.
Someone just to acknowledge your presence every now and then.
Well, yeah, you know how I feel like.
Yeah, look,
my
that's why I
favorite
say
thing
literally
is to be on my own. Like, I do not want to wake up in the morning and there's someone else in the bed with me. But I have said that if I could find someone who was able to just put me to sleep every night with a back tickle, I would be totally happy.
Yeah, that's what I'm talking about.
I'd sign up for that for life. And then after I've fallen asleep, they must just disappear and I mustn't see them again until the next back tickle is required. Get out of my life, right? So, yeah, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah.
I'd rather be in South Africa than all the war-stricken countries, says Snipes. I mean, Biden closed varsities for a year in the US because of Israel, Palestine. No one mentions Sudan besides Al Jazeera and JJ Cornish. Yeah, you make a good point, Snipes. Listen, if you look at the world, there are always going to be worse places. I watched a brilliant bit of a documentary. I didn't watch the whole thing because I think it's in like 4 episodes. Do you know Michael Palin from Monty Python?
Mm.
So he does a travel show. He doesn't do comedy at all anymore. And I saw an interview with John Cleese, also of Monty Python, the other day, who said, "Oh, I was watching Michael Palin's dreary and boring travel show the other day." He's very disparaging about it, which I love. But I thought that this was a great show because he went to Iraq.
Okay.
Now,
it's like we're not all eagerly packing up to go.
I would, no, that would interest me because it's ancient Mesopotamia, right? You could also go and see like Uday and Qusay Hussein's palace that they lived in, Saddam's children, right? I found this just remarkable. So Michael Palin, first of all, to get into Iraq, pretty much from anywhere is...
I was going to say, how do you even do it?
Tough work. And then he goes to Mosul, where there was huge fighting. I mean, ISIS were only kind of stamped out there in 2013, 14. It's not that long ago. And the buildings are all burnt out and bombed out, and there's more rubble than there is building.
Yeah.
I mean, it's hard to tell what the fresh rubble and what the old rubble is. But what a place, huh? I mean, there's history that's just eons deep. And the people are resilient. There are cafes on the banks of the Tigris River, which he visited, where people are sitting there with hubblies, hookah pipes, smoking. Obviously, they don't drink. It's a very, very strict Muslim country even now. You know, they had ISIS, for heaven's sake, who enforced in that particular part of Kurdistan a very, very intolerant and orthodox regime. But these people they're living their lives. He went to a tailor. He went to a tailor's shop in Erbil called Mr. Erbil. You can look it up on the internet. He had a jacket made, but like a really beautifully made English tailor level Savile Row jacket. And I marvel at the fact that there are people who, in a place that has up to just a couple of weeks ago, really, in the span of time, it feels like just a little while ago, because we all grew up with kind of Iraq in the background, right? And he interviews this woman about growing up during that time. And she talks about the Kurdish ethnic cleansing that Saddam Hussein did. And then he attends this Nowruz, which is like New Year in Kurdistan. And they all go up onto the hills with torches and fireworks. And you think, hell, if the people of northern Iraq can get their shit together to the degree that they feel a nationhood, and that people can make a living for themselves, they can do cool things, they can live their lives, they can have tailor shops or whatever else it is. Power to them, man.
Clearly no PTSD there with the fireworks.
Yeah. I mean, I was just blown away. I think what a phenomenal story.
Yeah.
So again, Tracy agrees with me. She saw it too. Michael Palin's show in Iraq was incredible. That tragedy he told of the slaughter along the river was heartbreaking. Yeah, well, this is where Saddam Hussein actually murdered a bunch of Kurds. And, there's the old adage, it's not very funny, but it's poetic, that Saddam had Kurds in his way.
Oh, yes.
And, it was well known that despite the fact that America may have embellished the idea of weapons of mass destruction, you remember Colin Powell going up in front of the UN and talking about chemical and biological weapons, and this is why we've got to take on Saddam. Turns out that probably wasn't true. And that's not a controversial thing to say. But nonetheless, he was a genocidal maniac. And if you go on the internet, you can find something really interesting.
Oh, yeah?
You will find a video which is like a documentary on the exact moment that Saddam seized power. You can watch a video of him sitting in parliament with the Ba'athist Party, his party. And the exact moment he becomes a dictator is the moment that he, after making a speech about nationalism and all the rest, he does this thing where he points to some guy in the crowd and he says, "You did this, did that, stole this, stole that." And soldiers come in and they frog march this poor asshole outside. And then he points to another guy and they come and get him. And he points to a couple, and now like the room is thinning out and the people in it are getting ever more kind of uncomfortable and shifting in their chairs. And suddenly someone stands up and goes, "Saddam Hussein is the sun and the moon and the light of Iraq.
Goodness.
And thank God for him." And then another guy, because these are now all the Central Committee members who know that they could be on that list too, right? They have to pledge their allegiance. At that moment, they all become his servants and he becomes the leader. And there's no turning back. And they all suddenly realize what's happened.
Sure.
There's no room for dissent anymore. And then, to seal the deal, and the part that you won't find any footage of, is he sends the people that remain, who are now devoted to him, obviously, in fear of their lives, but just to make sure they don't change their mind. He sends them out. They must take a gun and shoot the bad guys who he's already put out there. So the ones who were accused are standing outside against a wall, and the ones who made it through without having to be accused must now shoot them. So he involves them in the plot. Now there's no turning back.
Goodness me.
Hell of a story, huh?
Jeez.
Gives me goosebumps when I think about it. Anyway, that's enough of the heavy stuff for this morning. Look who's here. It's James.
Mora.
From the sublime to the ridiculous. All right, so James, we had quite a lot of sport over the weekend. I would be lying to you if I said I paid any attention to any of it, so update me.
I will do just that. As usual.
And listen, can we get rid of this terrible The Gareth Cliff Show that's all bright behind me?
It is on the cards.
Thank you.
It's on the cards.
Thank God. It looks like it looks terrible.
You don't like your name in big flashy lights.
I mean, why would anyone be here if they had no idea who I was?
That's fair.
And I think we can just have it a little more elegant.
Right.
Let's work. Okay. Just work on that.
That'll be on the list for today.
Back to the sport.
I got you. So we'll start with the football as usual. I feel like every time I'm coming here, it's getting a lot worse for Liverpool Football Club.
Is that bad news for you?
It is bad news for me. You could officially say...
Did you cry?
A little bit. Quite a lot, actually. I won't lie to you.
Okay, go on.
You could officially say we're out of the title race. As of this weekend, we drew 2-2 to West Ham. Chelsea beat Aston Villa. Chelsea drew to Aston Villa 2-2. Arsenal beat Spurs 3-2. What all of that means is that Arsenal are now top of the log by 1 point, City behind them by another point, and Liverpool have fallen behind by like 5. So we're officially out of it. It's not looking good for us, and the potential new winners of the Premier League could be Arsenal or Manchester City. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully not Arsenal, because that would be quite unbearable. Sticking with the football, Sundowns are out of the CAF Champions League. They lost 1-0 to Esperance Tunis. Tough luck for them. Moving on to the rugby, the URC. As expected, the Bulls bounced back in a big way, thrashing Ospreys.
Yes, Ben predicted this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And of course, this little sports update is brought to you by Superbets. And why I refer to them now is because Ben said if you take a little gamble on them, you could do quite well. He was right.
Yeah,
he said they were going to come back strong.
And they did. 61-24 was that scoreline there. Yeah, pretty big for them. The Stormers were also equally impressive in dispatching of Leinster, but the Lions lost out against Munster 13-33. With Leinster getting 0 points from their last 2 games, Glasgow is now top of the URC log. And then lastly, in the MotoGP, it was the Spanish MotoGP.
Hang on, before we move on, JP wants to know, James, what happened between Salah and Klopp? Trouble in paradise?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. So I actually have no idea. They haven't released the mic audio as far as I'm aware. But basically what's happened, to give you guys context, is not the UK, Gareth. But Mo Salah was coming off the bench for Liverpool. There was a bit of a back and forth.
I thought they were names of donkeys. Sorry. Carry on.
No, one's the coach, one is the player. One of them is the star player, actually. They had a bit of a back and forth on the side of the field.
Oh, so there was an argument, a visible bit of
altercation.
Okay, right.
Yeah, not happy.
Bit of argy-bargy on the sidelines. Okay.
And
very
what makes
exciting.
It worse is Salah's like the star man for Liverpool, and you don't want to see the star man and the coach having a go at each other. So I'm not sure just yet, JP. I don't know if the audio has been released. Because they do have touchline mics these days. So I'm not sure. Hopefully not too bad.
But it looked bad.
It looked pretty bad. Klopp is out the door at the end of the season anyway. And judging by this weekend, probably Salah is also. So bad to worse for Liverpool every time I come into the set. Lastly, MotoGP, Spanish MotoGP this weekend. Brad Binder finished in 6th. Francesco Bagnaia won. He came first, with Bastianini coming in 5th. And that is the sport.
Mapello says, James, can you start with South African games for once in your reporting?
I will next week, I promise.
Well, I can tell you that SuperSport United played, I think it was Kaizer Chiefs, and lost 2-0 or 2-1.
Brought more
that I knew. Sport. I found somebody in my office, Gen Z.
Oh, yeah.
Who, when I mentioned SuperSport United, because one of the brands I work for sponsors them, she said, I honestly thought there were just 2 local soccer teams. I thought there were Kaizer Chiefs and Orlando Pirates. So I said, did you think that they were playing each other all along?
Just them.
She said, I honestly didn't know.
Didn't even know about Sundowns.
And then later on she said, but I think there was a third Sundowns. I said, no, look, there are a few.
All right.
There's a couple.
Yeah.
There's a couple of leagues too.
Okay, well, somebody says here, Sanele says, Gareth took some pointers from Saddam. He's dictator to James this morning. Yeah, watch the hell out, right?
It is what it is. I'll just fall into line.
I do agree with Hadmin that my logo here behind us looks like a 90s nightclub sign. See? Not just me who feels that way. We'll change it.
Look quite clean, but we'll change it.
Listen, we got so much to still do. Considering, last week was our first ever green screen show. We still haven't even scratched the surface on the other stuff that we can do, which I'm excited to show you. But we're not going to rush things. We're going to settle in and make it work. And for many people who are listening on audio only, none of this matters. The people who are listening to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, wherever, that's cool. You just stick with us.
Can I just say though that if you are still on the audio version, I think the video version is about to get a whole lot better.
Well, it's probably a good time for you to switch over.
Yeah.
Anyway, let us have your feedback because we do want to know what you think about it. And if you have any suggestions, tell us about that too. I'll just ignore them, but James might take them seriously. All right, and don't forget that we do sport every Friday with Ben, and then we check in on those results on a Monday with James. And Superbets are the people who make that possible. They support responsible gambling, Leigh-Ann. Strictly no under 18s. Winners know when to stop. The South African Responsible Gambling Foundation's toll-free counseling hotline is 0800 006 008. Thank you, James. Very good. We've got Dr. Hanan joining us shortly. It'll be the first time we have him on the show. Make sure that we can hear him there, James.
I'm going to do my best.
No, please don't screw it up. It's very important for us. All right. Very, very good. And then here's a little update from JP. Says, after that game in question, Salah walked past reporters and said, if I speak, there will be fire. So that's how we know there's some... You see, now suddenly I'm interested. Like suddenly...
you like a bit of a fight.
I love a bit of conflict.
Yeah,
have you noticed? Yeah, it's a good thing. How long until smell-o-vision? Ugh. I don't know if I ever want TV with smell.
Oh, that sort of smell. Oh, no, thank you.
No, that's not something I'm interested in. Let's leave it.
Unless it's a cooking show or something. Yeah.
Even.
I know that's not your
because that will drive me crazy.
Yeah.
I don't understand why anyone would watch a cooking show. I've said this before.
I should not have said cooking show.
I wish you hadn't brought Diamond around.
Oh my God, I know.
So because what's the point? If you can't eat the stuff, I don't see the point of watching other people make stuff that you're never going to eat. Who cares? What you think? You think you're going to go into your kitchen straight afterwards? Because who's that baking woman?
Nigella, maybe?
I don't know. Some putzfrau who makes stuff in her kitchen. I don't know. Stuff that I'm totally disinterested in. That the stuff rises in the... I don't know. It's bread or cake or who the hell knows the difference. Anyway,
stuff that rises in
this
the
woman,
oven.
and then she cooks the stuff. She goes, "Oh, it smells so wonderful," and I'm like, "For you, but I don't want to smell it if I can't eat it until they deliver the cake to my house straight after that putzfrau's made it. I'm not interested." Okay,
Yeah.
Eating is a singularly real-world experience. There is no virtual world equivalent, and I don't think there ever will be. No matter how many. You could plug 100 things into people. It's not going to work. And you know, smell is way more complicated than taste because taste is informed by smell.
Yes.
Like taste is downstream from smell. So only if you can smell certain things can you taste them. All right, there's my rant.
I'm thinking of the horrible things as well. And you mentioned downstream.
Oh, absolutely. Like you're going to, eventually there's going to be really bad things that people are going to just suddenly...
I mean, imagine watching that Dahmer series with Jeffrey Dahmer.
Oh.
When the police walked in and opened up the barrels in his bedroom. There's some really bad things that could happen.
You should watch it. It's a show called Is It Cake?
Yes, there is that.
Oh, please.
Where it looks like a glass or a cell phone or a laptop. And you've got to guess if it's cake or not. It's so hyper realistic.
Okay. Oh,
that you might enjoy because it's from an artistry point of view.
I mean, it requires an enormous amount of
huge skill.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Talent, skill, ability to fool people. It's like trompe-l'oeil art where you think something is 3D, but it isn't. It's almost like that. My niece says you're an obal lol. Okay, I'm not sure I understand that. Is your niece also a bit of a slow adult? I'm not. Almost every day, the first person I see is Gareth from my bed. Very creepy, says Mapello.
Oh, wow.
Well,
okay.
You know
what? It's your choice,
Yeah. Welcome. Welcome to my world. Gordon Ramsay is entertaining, says somebody. Naked Goose.
Yeah, he is.
Yeah. I like him. I think he'd be fun to spend time with because I think he's very rude.
I hardly watch him cook anymore. I see him more in sort of
shouting.
No, he's got this show where he trains people within the food and drink or beverage industry.
Doesn't he go into restaurants and then help them run them better?
That's also old.
Oh.
So now he's got his own thing where he puts everything behind one person who wins out of, say, 10, who are marketing some kind of new beverage that they've developed or, so it's like a business show.
Where's Dr. Hanan? I mean, really? You come in here, do the sports results, and then what must we do? Tit about for the next hour while you're meant to get Dr. Hanan on. There he is. I can see him. I'll add him. Here we go. Hey, Doc.
Hey, guys.
What's happening?
Love the background. Sure, congrats.
You like it? You must come in one morning.
Definitely. I'm in.
I'm to spend some time with you in here.
I'd love that.
All right, so what are we talking about today? Let's have a look, because we always get emails from people who have all kinds of issues in their lives. Of course, Dr. Hanan is our live-in psychologist. He's our shrink. We get on the sofa with him once a week, and he helps us iron out our problems. So here's a question for you on email, Doc. I've been through a breakup, and during this time, I moved back with my parents. My ex and I have started talking again, and we want to give our relationship a second chance. Only problem is my family and friends might not approve of this because during our time apart, I did the stupid thing of venting and crying about my ex with them. What can I do to make them feel at ease about our decision and coping with the aftermath of them not approving of us getting back together?
Oh, because now you don't actually have to just convince yourself and your partner. Now you've got to convince everyone else that things have changed.
Well, I mean, this is such a disaster. It's like when when people break up and you take a side and then they end up getting back together.
Yeah.
I know, yeah. It's very common. Then you pick a side and your friends start bad-mouthing him as well. And they say, well, you shouldn't have been with him. He was an arsehole to begin with. And so glad that you've broken up. And they pile on the argument of why the breakup is so good. And then you end up doing the U-turn method and you get back together. And now you have to explain why you were wrong in terms of your assessment of the relationship. So it's all too common. And I hear this quite often. And I think lesson number one is don't talk bad about pretty much anybody. I mean, don't waste your time bad-mouthing anybody because you don't know how that might come back and bite you. But number two, I always say human beings are incredible at adapting. We're terrible at predicting, but we are amazing at adapting. So if the question is, how do I get my friends to accept my new relationship with this new person? First of all, I would say to you, the person that got back together, make sure you're getting back for the right reasons. That wasn't the question, but make sure you're getting back together for the right reason, not because you're lonely and not because you miss him and not because your feelings tell you to go right back. We know what we all feel about feelings. Make sure you're getting back in the relationship because it's the right relationship. Make sure you're getting back into the relationship because the things that you've broken up or the reasons why you've broken up in the first place are no longer there and they're resolved and you've developed and you've improved in the relationship, and so is your partner. But assuming you're getting back into the relationship for the right reasons, just get back into it and explain to your closest friends of why things are different. But your friends will adapt. As long as they see your relationship improving and being better and you being treated in a way that you deserve to be treated, I have no doubt that your friends will adapt. Don't make excuses, explain, but just get back into the relationship and show your friends through experience at why this relationship is right.
So the two things here. The first one is that, like, I'm really happy if any of my friends are in a happy relationship. And however that person makes them happy, I forgive whatever misgivings I might have about them. I think that's probably the healthy approach for the friends. But there's another thing, is this constant oversharing. And I kind of blame TV talk shows in the 90s and 2000s. I blame social media, that everybody feels they need to just share everything. How about you shut up and keep it to yourself until you've figured out what the hell you want to do before you go and make everybody else aware of how you're having issues with your girlfriend or your wife. This, by the way, is one of the reasons I don't play golf, because I don't want to hear the other guys moaning about their wives. I first of all find it very, very boring, but I also find it disloyal. I'm like, you keep that to yourself until you and she have ironed out some of your petty differences. And then come and play golf or have fun with the rest of your mates without your baggage. This is not an appointment with Dr. Hanan. Am I right?
Gareth, you are right. I actually think a lot of people share because they want to seem like part of the group. They want a sense of acknowledgement and a sense of belonging, and they think it's cool. But I want to tell everybody, whenever you speak badly about somebody in your inner circle, or when you speak badly about somebody that you've left, it sounds ugly. It's just ugly on you. It doesn't sound pretty. I completely agree with you. It's disloyal and completely disrespectful. And if anything, it doesn't discredit them. It devalues you. It discredits you.
Yeah.
It makes you look ugly and cheap. So don't talk badly about anybody, because first of all, there's no real value in that for you. And secondly, nobody really cares. And thirdly, it might come back to backfire. It might backfire on you, especially when you make a U-turn and reverse your decision and go back to that relationship. Imagine, to your point, imagine going out to play golf and you speak so badly about your wife and why your wife is this and why your wife is that. And then you go out for dinner with your wife and you're all huggy and holding hands. How disingenuous does it look when you've just spoken so badly about your partner at home, and then suddenly you're lovey-dovey in person? It makes you look cheap.
And I love the way some like fat, average-looking, uninteresting guy on a golf course is busy giving the one woman in the world who would condescend to love him shit. I mean, like, how dare that guy, you know? I mean, first of all, I'm not friends with any people like that, but if I were, I'd really question my own sanity.
100%.
But like, who's this guy think he is? Was he Brad Pitt? His big bookends and his, you know, his desire to drink 23 beers in the afternoon because he thinks he's unhappy. What is that?
You know, I always say if you want a true personality test, don't go online and don't go do these psychometric tests. If you truly want to know what you are and who you are, just look at the people that you hang around with. They are your true mirror of who you are. And if you hang around those people that are speaking badly about their loved ones at home, whether it's their partners or even business partners or their colleagues, then that's the person that you are as well. And ask yourself, do I really want to hang around with those kind of individuals that are disloyal? And again, it doesn't make the people that you talk about look ugly. It makes you look completely cheap and devalued.
All right, one quick follow-up to this. Is it okay that a couple of weeks ago, I and 3 of my very good friends, I forced them to say an obituary to me in advance? Like, this sounds a bit odd, but give me a moment to explain. So, you know, when you're dead, you don't really have the ability to hear what people might say about you. And maybe we'd been drinking a bit. Okay. And I felt like it was the appropriate time to make them work a bit.
Yeah.
Right? I'm like, now let's earn each other's friendships again, because sometimes you just take it all for granted. I said to them, all right, everyone here, because we all like each other. There are only 4 of us at that point. I'm like, you all have to say what you would say if we were dead right now. And let's see how good you are at this. Also, there would be maybe 1 or 2 surprise and quite poetic insights.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there've been people who have faked their own deaths in order to find out.
Well, I didn't want to do that. That sounds like a lot of work. But
yeah, it does.
I also involved myself in it by saying something about each of them too. I found it to be a very, very cool exercise. Now, I'm not saying that this is something everybody should do, because maybe some people are a bit emotional and they wouldn't handle it. And it's also kind of a devastating thing for your friends to say, right, what would you say if I was dead?
Yeah.
But it actually turned out to be a fascinating exercise. Would you recommend this to other people? And do you think I did the right thing?
So I think it's really interesting on a couple of fronts. One, when you ask your friends to do that, you're basically asking for honesty, but let's call it covered with kindness. Because when you've passed, obviously people are going to be very kind about you, but they're going to be kind, and they're going to be honest about
someone's dead.
They're going to be honest about the things that you've done really well and how you've impacted their lives. I think it's a very therapeutic way of not only seeing what your friends would say about you in kind of when you're not around, but also you facing your own mortality, acknowledging that one day this will happen. And maybe those friends are not going to be there, but somebody's going to say something about you. And there's something very therapeutic about acknowledging that life doesn't go on forever. At some point, the lights will be switched off, which allows you then to live your life to the fullest, understanding that we all on a time scale, on a time period. We're all on a stopwatch. The one huge fallacy that we all live by, or many people live by, is the Peter Pan, let's call it myth of living forever. This notion that this will never end, which actually just stops us from really living our lives to the fullest, because there's always, on Monday. On Monday, I'll start my life. On Monday, I'll go to the gym. On Monday, I'll take my break. On Monday, I'll be honest with my boss. On Monday. Monday never comes. But the moment you know that one day the lights will be switched off and that will be the end, actually it puts you on a stopwatch, and you got to live life to the fullest now, because Monday might not come. So I think it's quite an interesting exercise, especially if you do it with the people that are closest to you, people that are kind and people that are honest. then you get a true reflection of what people would truly say and what people do say about you when you're not around.
Were there any surprises to you?
No, I think they were mostly pleasant about it, and like genuinely sad that I had gone. And
was it satisfyingly sad?
Well, look, I wasn't looking. It wasn't an ego trip. In fact, it was exactly the opposite. I think that was what made it exciting, is that suddenly you are forced to come to terms with why you're actually friends with this person. What is it that kept you in their life and kept them in yours?
It gives you an opportunity to change something if you hear something that you don't
I was
like.
so ready to get rid of some of them if they had shitty obituaries. Don't you worry, I can move on very quickly. I did see a comment here, and I don't want you to pay any attention to this, Doc, but I do want to acknowledge the comment. Someone here says someone has to talk to Gareth about how cruel he is to James.
Oh, he must stop abusing James or something.
Yeah, I mean, that's nonsense, right? Just a one-word answer is fine, Doc.
That's nonsense.
There we go. There we go. The doctor has spoken. Very good. All right. Very, very good. I stood up to begin my mother-in-law's eulogy, says Joking Atheist. I'd like to thank everyone for being here today. I said, especially the person in the coffin. All right. Dr. Hanan, we will check in with you shortly. Have an excellent week.
Same to you guys. Nice to see you.
All right, very good. And a short week it is because we've got that Wednesday public holiday. So get ready for that, everybody. All right, we're going to take a quick break. We will be back in a moment or two. And I'm thrilled because in our new studio, and for the first time, Borge is coming to spend time with us, which is awesome. We haven't seen Borge in the studio for a little bit, and he's going to be hanging with us, joining in all the conversation. So if you'd like to send anything to Borge in the form of a question or a comment, you can do that too. If you haven't already, like and subscribe. Stop being lazy. It's the least you can do. We woke up at ungodly hours to be with you this morning.
Crack
Yes,
of dawn.
it's a guilt trip. Get with it. Like, subscribe, pass on the word. Spread this to your friends, your family, even your enemies. We like your enemies to join in. Imagine all the things they'll hear that they won't like.
Nice.
All right, happy Monday. We'll be back in a moment.
This week on the AutoTrader podcast.
And it was raining, it was pouring, literally. So I'm going, everything's fine. All of a sudden, I lose all traction. I'm just sliding. And I was like, what do I do now? What do I do? And I just remembered, like, Lightning McQueen, really. I was like...
to turn right, turn left.
So I'm like, what would Lightning McQueen do? And I'm turning the opposite direction. And fortunately, I wasn't going, too fast. So it didn't manage to catch its grip again.
Yeah.
And I had the biggest scare of my life because, there's rocks everywhere. And it was just a terrifying experience. I don't know if you've ever been through that.
Catch us every Monday at 9 a.m. on YouTube and on autotrader.co.za.
Good morning. Happy Monday, everybody. We are thrilled that George Mienie, the CEO of AutoTrader and a longtime friend of the show, is able to spend some time with us this morning. He's not traveling somewhere in the world, attending some fancy show somewhere, driving something or flying something or sailing something.
Pushing or pulling or
There's pretty much any vehicle that has ever been used on planet Earth, with the exception of maybe a penny farthing. This man has driven at some point. Nice to see you, George.
Yeah, you too, Gareth.
How are you?
Yeah, I'm good. I'm very good.
What's news?
Trying to look after my health and feel like I'm being successful.
Are those things not all automatic with you? I thought they were.
Yeah, they kind of.
You're so disciplined. He like wakes up and does.
Yeah, you eat bowls of spinach and stuff, don't you?
Yeah, but you know the thing is, you got to acknowledge that I'm still human, and it does fall apart sometimes.
When
Leigh-Ann
Leigh-Ann says bowls of spinach, I like picture George waking up and everything is he's just like gets out of bed. And he goes, I'm Popeye the Sailor Man. We live in a caravan, or however it goes. Yeah. And then he like goes to the gym and he eats right and he's like fresh and ready for every meeting. And like, do you have bad days?
Yeah, a couple of weekends ago, I actually had an ice cream weekend. It was terrible because Monday morning I woke up and I was like, shouldn't have done that. Okay. So sometimes it does fall apart. But that's 10% of the time.
Listen, I got something to show you too that I found over the weekend. It's been such a busy weekend. So I found this thing where they talk about the ways people have died, but in the 1600s. So they've got a list of causes of death in the year 1603 or whatever it is.
The descriptions are so weird sometimes.
It's so great. Okay, so let me tell you.
Not the Darwin Awards.
No. So it's up now.
Okay, so by far and away, the biggest killer in that year, with 2,268 deaths, is chrysomes and infants.
The infants caused the deaths?
No, they're not murderous infants.
Oh.
Chrysomes are kids who have not even been baptized yet.
Sinners.
In English in 1632, this is how they spoke. No, but effectively children who didn't make it beyond much further than childbirth. So they might have been born alive, but they didn't make it. They were, born with defects, or they're deprived of oxygen, or something happened in the birth process. And then obviously, as a part of that, childbed, where, in other words, mothers who died giving birth, 171 deaths. But as you go down, I mean, you really have to look up what some of these things are. Affrighted.
Maybe a heart attack?
I'd like to think just frightened.
That's what I was
thinking.
thinking.
To death.
Somebody gave you a fright and you died.
Yeah.
Right. One death in the year 1632. Affrighted. Aged. So this is just people who just aged out, There were 628 of those. Ague. 43. So I had to look that up. It's like malaria or a fever.
Okay.
Ague. Burnt and scalded. 5 people dead of burns and scalding. Then they've got some interesting ones. Consumption, of course, was a very big killer. Consumption was TB.
Yeah.
In those days, that's what they called it. So it wasn't. I always used to think it was something about like you just ate or you drank.
Oh no!
But it was TB.
Is it not the black lung, or is that the same? Is that something else?
Consumption is tuberculosis.
Okay.
And they just had no way of dealing with that in those days. I mean, to this day, we still aren't entirely sure how to deal with it. Then there's stuff like lethargy. 2 people died of lethargy.
Laziness.
A lot of those in the world today.
Laziness.
Yeah.
And it killed 2 people in 1632.
How do you establish that? You died of lethargy.
Maybe
when your skin starts melding with the fabric of the sofa.
you die of
Technically,
lethargy.
it's lethargy.
Scurvy killed 9. That's, of course, a lack of vitamin C.
A sailor thing.
It happened to a lot of sailors because they didn't have fresh fruit. There's vomiting. Someone vomited to death. 1 death from vomiting. Worms killed quite a few people.
Oh.
That's pretty disturbing. Worms killed 27 people.
Worms
in
like
your guts. Yeah.
Huh.
I mean, we don't think they can kill us anymore.
Well, I suppose.
But they can.
Yeah, now
they grow too big and too long.
Start coming out your ears.
And your asshole. But there's some interesting stories here about, and I thought this was quite a grief. 11 died of grief in that year.
Sure.
And lunatic. Lunatics, 5 were lunatics. They
Only 5.
died from being mad. Yeah.
Let
In
those
those
out
days, well, you just kept
Absolutely.
quiet if you were a lunatic because they would either castrate you or give you a hysterectomy to get rid of the hysteria.
34 drowned. 1,108 had fevers. 13 had a fistula.
Tells that.
Oh, that usually comes out of your.
Nether regions. 5 of gangrene.
Yeah.
Jaundice was a big killer. Liver grown, which I suspect has something to do with the drinking.
It's an enlarged, like fatty liver disease.
You would think so, right? Piles. That's very unfortunate. Someone died of piles.
One person.
Yeah, you can take that graphic down now. It's no interest for people to look at a list. I'll read the list. Don't you worry. But I mean, so we got pleurisy, rising of the lights. I don't know what that is. Canker and then cancer, 2 different things. And the other one that I liked, well, I didn't like it, but 6 people dead in the street and starved.
Okay, and that might be from exposure.
Yeah. So it would have been, or just like starvation. So homelessness.
Yes,
Clearly
or
was the
exposure to the elements.
But I thought that was pretty interesting from 1632.
What was the most deaths?
Most was infant
those
death.
murderous
Infant
children.
deaths.
Or cot deaths, I suppose you could
Okay.
call them now.
Yes.
So very, very young children who just weren't strong enough to make it. And remember, 1632, there's no penicillin.
Yeah.
You still call it the ability to thrive. You still say this child's not thriving.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, correct. Because surviving is just half of it.
Mm.
Right? And listen, if you think about it, having a child for the mother could sometimes be deadly.
Yeah.
We know that there are still to this day complications around childbirth.
Yeah.
So
But I think cesareans have taken that complication off the table a lot.
absolutely, but there's still, funny things that can happen. And of course, for the child, it was dangerous too. So sometimes you had these fathers who were forced to choose mother or kid.
What
Imagine
would you do?
Imagine having to make that
What would
decision.
you do? Yeah, I mean, that must be the toughest decision. I think my thinking around that would be, I would likely choose the mother because you have a relationship with the mother already.
Right.
The problem is the mother's probably already said if there's a
yes.
choice to be made, to
Exactly,
take
take
the
the
child.
child. But the thing is, you don't have a relationship with that child yet. It's hard either way, but you're going to choose to let go a relationship that you already have. Tough one.
Slippery Pickle says they were doing the best they had with the science that they had at the time, George.
It's true. Shame. I mean, it's very sweet in retrospect.
Yeah, shame. A Naked Goose says worms killed more people in those days than sharks. Having a child with worms, you must run for the hills.
Take worm coming to chase you.
I just thought
But we
that was...
still had worms growing up in the 80s. There were. I remember in our pharmacy, there were little test tubes of all the different worms.
Oh, no.
And like worm medication was a big thing. And has your child been dewormed? And sand pits. And I remember that being a big thing.
Lice is still a thing today. in
Lice,
kids.
yes,
Lice.
absolutely.
Um,
At schools, right?
Yeah.
Because it spreads, and
spreads
then
like
suddenly all the
wildfire.
kids are like,
Well,
when a dog goes,
you're supposed to not be nasty about it, but it does feel it must feel a bit strange to have things crawling in your head.
Well, I saw one other quick list, which I'll share with you. These are from a 90s baseball video game where a Japanese game designer had to make up some American names. So, we don't often think about how stupid some American names sound. Like we'll make fun of a name that we hear from a country that's far away from us, for example. But American culture is such a part of what we consume in movies and TV and everything else. So listen to some of these names that this Japanese video game designer, and this wasn't AI, this was a person. Sleeve McDykel, Onsen Sweeney, Daryl Archideld.
So he had no idea that I was
No.
making stuff up.
No, I mean, these are not Glenn Allen Mixon,
My goodness.
Ray McSriff. This is what a Japanese guy thought American names were. Kevin Nogilny, Tony Smecherik,
Wow.
Bobson Dugnut,
Dug nuts.
Willie Dustis, Jerome Gride, Scott Durua, Sean, not Sean, Sean Furcott.
Forgot.
Mike Truck. George, if you weren't George Mienie, it'd be Mike Truck.
Oh, yeah.
I think that's a good one for you.
Yeah.
Dwight Rortugal.
Not Portugal, but Portugal.
No. Tim Sandali. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. Carl Dandleton, Mike Cernandez, and Todd Bonzales.
Did you?
These are good names.
You say it's not AI generated, but immediately it made me think of something that I saw over the weekend. And somebody said, can you make just like an American cowboy type song?
Yeah.
And it was like trucks and blade and shirts and shoes and boots and trucks and blade and shoes and guns up your butt.
I'm glad that you've been using AI for the right reasons.
No, but I did do a little bit of AI research, and I've got some pictures as well.
Okay. What do you got?
I wanted to show you, because obviously we're all using it now for wordy stuff. And to start using it for images is something a little bit different. But this person tested Google Gemini, which we know was in a little bit of shit at one point.
Oh, they were so woke. They were like rewriting history.
No, they were not woke. So they had, every time somebody asked for an image, they were just old white men.
And then they went the other way.
Then they started messing
because
up.
they said like the founding fathers, and they had just these pictures of these black guys.
Oh, dear.
I was like, yeah.
Okay, then there's ChatGPT and then Meta AI. So this researcher did a little test and put in the same instructions to each of them to see what came up.
Okay.
So there are a few there. I don't know if you just want to show some of them, and I'll describe them.
Mm-hmm.
So that one there is where the instruction was the prompt was a thought-provoking conceptual image symbolizing the struggle between nature and technology, featuring a robotic hand delicately holding a fragile, blooming flower amidst a desolate post-apocalyptic landscape. So, I mean, it's quite a deep description. But the one that came first in this guy's mind was on the right, because ChatGPT and Gemini seem to be too similar.
Yeah, I like the Meta AI one.
Yeah, it's like, gives you a little bit of a feeling of tenderness and showing the struggle like between nature and technology.
I mean, they have their artistic merits.
Yeah.
Have you ever used Midjourney, George, to make a picture?
No, I haven't used Midjourney at all.
It can be quite an addictive thing, because eventually you just sit there going, let me see what it comes up with if I type this in. And there's some of it's rubbish.
So what I do a lot lately is on the ChatGPT app, bottom right-hand side, there's a set of headphones.
You use the paid one or the
the free one now.
Okay.
I want to go to the paid one because I believe it's a
huge upgrade.
A huge upgrade. Yeah. But right now I use the headphones on the bottom right-hand side of the app.
Oh, yeah?
So if you're in your car and you're on Bluetooth, you hit that little button and a circle starts spinning, and you can have a full-on conversation with her or him, whichever one you choose.
Oh, wow.
And so there's no end to the prompt. So she or he will wait for you to re-engage. So you can ask follow-up questions. I've had a 30-minute conversation. And then it puts it into a transcript for you, so you can see
later on
you can go and read it. So I'm going to the Gareth Cliff Show. Give me some interesting things to talk to Gareth about.
Okay.
And it'll know Gareth.
I'm sorry, George. I am not capable of making that man any more boring than he already is. Rather talk to your shoe.
He's been so rude to me in the past. I refuse to talk about him.
I have a personal relationship with that guy, and he's an asshole.
Yeah.
So it's a very interesting thing to do, because you can have a full-on conversation.
I see that there's another picture there, if you want to pull it up, with where it was asked to make an old wizard, and Gemini just flatly refused to make an image of anything that looks remotely like a human. Refused to make the image, said Gemini. Well, because of these
Gemini's
problems it's had before. Yeah. They won't even make a fictional person. But it's interesting to see how similar the ChatGPT and Meta AI ones are there.
Well, the Meta AI is like pretty much Gandalf.
Yeah.
Okay, but they both have dirty beards.
No, so it's not dirt. I also thought so.
Shells and
Intricate
beads.
braided beard adorned with magical trinkets.
Was that the
Prompt.
Prompt.
Yeah.
Old wizard.
A highly detailed close-up portrait of a wise old wizard with an intricate braided beard adorned with magical trinkets, captured in realistic style,
Who
reminiscent
do you think's
of
going to look
Renaissance
like a wise old
paintings.
wizard? Me or George when we're very old?
I think Gareth.
Yeah, you
think I look
probably
like a
will.
wizard?
I think you and I'll be the witch and the wizard. George will be like still the jester, the court jester or something.
Wow. We need to stop marveling at our own magnificence. I've watched that movie and it didn't look great, says Slippery Pickle. Wow. Okay. Slippery Pickle going straight in for the kill this morning. Marpello, however, a much more practical thing. How come homeless people are so full of energy, but they eat from trash bins?
That's very bizarre.
Marpello is not sympathetic.
I don't think I've seen a particularly energetic homeless person, to
Well,
be
type
honest.
it into Mid-Journey, see what you
that's
come
true.
up with. Okay, so I think this could be quite an addictive thing.
Yeah.
Do you remember how addicted to Google Earth I was?
Yes, that. But even
I was on there.
you were finding bunkers and things.
I was absolutely obsessed with Google Earth when it came out.
Really?
Yeah.
I was going everywhere in the world that I would want to travel and see things. I was finding ziggurats in Mesopotamia. I was finding the president's house in America, but not the White House, his actual house where he lives when he's not president, right? Military bases. I was looking at airports. I was looking at old ruins,
Jeez.
houses.
You could have gone to jail for that shit.
Well, there were some things in the beginning of Google Earth that were pixelated. Because I remember at that point, like Dick Cheney was vice president of the United States, and I tried to find things about where he lived and everything. You could find the street address, but then when you zoomed in, it was like totally pixelated. But after that, they started opening up all of that stuff.
Yeah.
Now you can find all the military installations in the US, like Mount Weather and.
So was the pixelation only in the United States?
I think what it was is in the beginning, because, Google Earth was a CIA project, which they then handed on to Google. And I think in the beginning, they classified stuff.
Yeah.
So you also couldn't.
But I wonder if you searched for, let's say, Nelson Mandela's house, if it was.
Oh, no, you could find all
clear
of that. Yeah.
Versus.
No, it wasn't world leaders. It was
Yeah.
just the US.
Yeah.
Because they kind of owned the technology. There were places, I was looking up like North Korea's nuclear installations. You could see those.
Yeah.
There was no pixelation there. But what I'm getting to here is, do you think that there are people now who are obsessed, like I was with Google Earth, about
completely.
AI and are using it all the time for everything, even if they don't need to? They're just like,
it's a rabbit hole. Look at it's exactly what I do in my car now with the headphone button. It's almost like I don't listen to music anymore. This morning, I didn't because I was listening to your show live.
Right.
So that was
Sure.
odd. So it becomes a rabbit hole.
Borge is going to look the same until he's 75.
Yeah, this is true.
And then his looks will just fall off a cliff.
Yeah, it's exactly that description is exactly what I want to happen.
But that would be amazing, right?
Yeah,
because at 75, we care what you look like anymore. In fact, the more cranky and weird and eccentric you are, like I know I'm going to be a very, very cranky, very eccentric old person, and I'm going to
you'll be the man on the
ranch.
ranch
Shoot
with the shotgun.
Kids on my lawn and shit. I'm going to be horrific. And I can't wait. It's like the most exciting thing ever. And I'll have an excuse for being horrible because I'll be old. They'll go, oh, that old man.
Yeah.
Don't go near his house. He's definitely a dangerous old bastard. But I think 75, George, if you can get to there and look exactly like you do, what a win.
What a win. You should, your body should give up instantaneously rather than fade.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's that old, I think it was Mr. T who said, I got something to see. It's better to burn up than to fade away. And I think that's good. That's the way to go.
Mr. T from the
Did you
18.
see
My goodness.
Miss Universe Buenos Aires?
No.
Okay.
I mean, I haven't watched
a
a beauty pageant for 100 years.
I never watched it. It just came up in my FIPE. my For You page,
Mhm.
but she is 60 years old and she's just won Miss Universe.
Wow.
Buenos Aires. I've got a picture of her if you want to
The
put that
actual
up.
Miss
Hell
Universe,
yeah.
not the old
Well, this is
person's Miss
no,
Universe.
no. Her
Good Lord, that woman is 60?
yeah, her fellow contestants were in their 20s.
I know a girl who looks exactly like that. She's 27.
She contested people in their 20s?
Yeah,
Good for her.
Wow.
she looks
60 years old.
amazing.
She's a lawyer.
a lawyer. Her name is Alejandra Rodriguez. She contested with 34 others,
Wow.
ranging in age from 18 to 73. I didn't know that part. To win the title.
Plastic surgery?
Must
be.
I don't know.
Tell
She
you
looks
what.
like a very natural. If I look at other photographs of her that I've got,
And she lives
by
in
the
a
way-
sunny country.
Yeah, I mean, Hamin says, holy shit, she's a witch. so I think that's phenomenal. Look,
Oh,
you know what? We said this before. 60 is not as old as it was
It's not.
when we were
It's
kids, and certainly not
Yeah.
as old as it was when our grandparents were around. By
Yeah.
60, you were like 1 foot in the grave.
Yeah.
we've all seen now those flashbacks to videos from or movies from the 80s where the kids in high school
Yeah.
looked like 30-year-olds.
Yeah.
And
But
how
they were, because they used like old
they did
ass
use
actors.
older actors.
Yeah.
But in many cases, no. If you look at side-by-side pictures of people and like guys and their dads at the same age,
It's different.
we look after ourselves
Yeah.
now. I mean, you don't even have to try that hard.
Mm.
I don't know. We were talking this morning, and maybe Borge has some advice for us here. But I said, I'm never coming onto this show now that we got like 4K and HD, and we got
100 lights.
It's like a TV show,
Yeah.
really.
Yeah.
I'm not putting makeup on. I could. You're going to have to just deal with how ugly I am in real life and in the show, because also when I do meet people in real life, then they won't look at me and scream, because they'll be used to it. I'll have conditioned them.
Mm.
It's like when we, for example, started playing Boney M music earlier in the year, so that people got used to it around Christmas time.
So no one died of fright.
Correct. So I'm not gonna let anyone die of fright. They'll have to just get used to how I look. I'm putting on makeup every morning. James is like, well, you could put a bit of powder on it. It'll take away some of the reflection. I'm like, who are you? Estee Lauder. Come on.
But also you have to get on with your normal life after this. And I feel like if I had to pile on the makeup, I'd look strange for the rest of the day. Because TV makeup, let's be honest, is
Yeah, no, it's packed on.
Yeah,
Ugh.
TV makeup is like
It's
air
horrible.
hostess makeup.
yeah, no, it's
We all
incredible.
know what that is, right? Air hostess makeup is fairly
You can etch stuff in
pronounced.
there.
Mm,
Yeah.
Right. She must be on adrenochrome, says Slippery
that
Pickle.
woman, the 60-year-old.
Listen, if this stuff works, I'm in for it as well.
What is
It's
adrenochrome?
like so. It's supposedly this stuff that it's a chemical, clearly that is in blood, but as you get older, there's less of it apparently. And there's this big conspiracy theory that there are these laboratories where the rich and famous get their adrenochrome that they extract from unwilling children. That's like
It's usually like teenaged kids who you kind
don't
of
know.
swap body fluids with, and
sounds like nonsense to me.
I don't know. I've seen it in movies. I don't know. If it
Carl
really
says, I
exists.
saw a picture of my dad at my current age.
Yes.
Hell, mate, he looked 65 at
You see.
37.
Yeah, there we go. I think it's just generally our lifestyles have changed.
Well, we're not eating as much
Junk.
MSG and tartrazine.
Yeah.
Although I read the other day, MSG turns out not to be bad for you.
Oh,
Who
boy.
knows?
They're always revising
knows?
this stuff.
I just got one.
But we
simple-
generally now wear sunblock.
You just go?
one simple rule.
Yeah.
Try and eat what's on your plate. Try and make sure you can recognize the food.
Right.
Yeah.
So
If it's beige and it looks
Oily.
reconstituted.
yes,
Everything's the same
so
colour.
it must look like a cow or look like a chicken or look like a piece of broccoli.
I saw someone ranting and raving about a woman who went into a shop and bought a ham.
Okay.
And then she said, is this ham fresh?
Reconstituted pig's ears.
And the guy was like, no, it can't be fresh. It's like polony can't be fresh. There's no part of the animal that's polony. There's no like well, there's the shin bone. Now, at least I know this is a real part of the polony of the animal. No, it's all the terrible parts that they
the
then
beak and the
they
arsehole and the
blend
feet.
them. They turn them into slush and mush,
And add jelly.
and then they add gelatin,
Which is cow's hoof
and they throw
pig's
in the
hoof.
noses and the ears and the hooves.
All the stuff everyone won't eat.
Yeah, and then people are like, well, I demand a fresh ham. You don't know what
Maybe
you're
she
dealing
means
with.
a ham as in a portion of a pig. You can buy a ham.
No, but it's not.
And then you
no.
get ham, which is processed meat, which is sliced and put onto your bread. That's different. But you can buy a hock of ham, which is
Yeah, I know what you mean. Now that's at least, yeah.
Yeah. At least
Listen,
at least it's a
I
real
am with
animal.
George. If you can't recognize the thing on your plate, don't touch it.
Yeah.
I'm not one of those food tourists either. You send me to a country and they tell me, we eat this part of the goat. I'm like,
Well, good for you.
you can carry on. I will pay a premium to not eat that part of the goat.
I tell you, I went to Vietnam
Mhm.
years ago, and I made the biggest mistake of doing exactly that, eating the local delicacy. So I had eel.
oh dear.
I was sick for 2 days.
Mm.
I thought
So-
I was going to end up in hospital or dead.
That is horrific. And eel, have you seen what they look like when they're alive, let alone when they're dead?
Oh, we eat worse looking things.
So King Henry I, we talked about funny ways to die in history, right?
Mm.
All those different things. King Henry I, in about 1100 and something, died of a surfeit of lampreys.
Which was probably, is it a surplus of something?
Good. You're warm.
And is an animal part.
Yes. So he ate too many lampreys. A lamprey is a kind of eel, which is what
Okay.
made me think of it. But it's got teeth like those worms in Dune. Okay. That's kind of what a
serious
lamprey is. And apparently it's a real delicacy. It was part of royal menus for hundreds of years. But this King Henry I is supposed to have eaten so many lampreys that he died.
And he wasn't even the fat one.
No.
That
I
was
mean,
the eighth.
I think if you eat too many lampreys, there's a chemical in it.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a toxin.
Yeah.
Yeah, that
Yeah, but-
builds up and it just knocks you out.
But it's the same as fish with mercury.
Yeah.
Mm.
If you overconsume fish, you
Right.
can get mercury poisoning.
Right, because it stays in the food
Yeah.
pyramid with them and it doesn't leave us. There's no
Yeah.
way, we don't have a mechanism in our bodies for expelling mercury.
Yeah.
So
it's-
whatever you take in, just something has to eat you to get the mercury out of you.
Like
Right.
the woman
A
who
lamprey.
swallowed a fly.
Yeah, something with like, by the way, I finally watched Dune 2, the second Dune movie. Wow. I wasn't expecting to enjoy it. I actually thought it's probably going to be lame, Timothy Chalamet. I was like, Hollywood, it's going to be lame. But I loved it.
Are you one of those people that when a new sequel comes out, you watch the first one or two? That's what I do.
Oh, so you watch them and you binge both?
I binge both, yeah. So
Okay,
I haven't watched Dune 2 yet, but if a sequel comes out, I'd go back and watch the first one, and then.
But you have watched the first one,
yes.
so you'd watch it again.
I'd watch it again,
so
and
that
then,
you could
yeah.
remind yourself of what happened.
I don't watch movies twice, ever. I've never watched a movie twice.
Never?
Unless it was like I was at a party.
Jaws?
Never twice.
Terminator?
No.
It's like when The Matrix came out. I think I watched the first Matrix about 4 times.
Oh, wow.
Because I think there's 4 movies.
Right. So you had to every time go back and watch the other preceding ones. No, there are some movies I've watched a lot.
Really?
Yeah, and I don't mind. Like there's definitely some stuff that I could watch again and again. In fact, that was my overriding decision maker back in the days of DVDs, because you'd actually
when
buy
you had
the
to
movie.
buy them, yeah.
Yeah, and I would be like, if I'm not going to watch this more than once, I'm not going to buy it.
I've never watched a DVD twice. Yeah. I feel like it's just wasting time. I've seen it, done it. I want to move on to the next thing.
Well,
Get as much information in.
The sad irony is that I don't have a means to play a DVD
No, that's
anymore.
the thing.
Like because I don't. You could probably play it on a gaming console,
Could
but
you?
I don't even have one of those. So I'm a bit stuck because I've got all these brilliant DVDs. I prided myself on my collection. Now I can't watch them. It's like you've got a safe full of things, but you've forgotten what the combination is.
Yeah, exactly.
It's very bad.
Talking about consuming content, I was watching this podcast the other day, and this lady was trying to put a different spin on mental health. And her argument was mental health, everybody's mentally healthy.
Yeah.
So, mental health is, I mean, I'm no doctor. Dr. Hanan probably, cringe at me talking about this.
Go on.
But mental health is something that is pretty broad. What we've got to shoot for is mental fitness.
Oh boy, here's a whole new category.
And a whole new category. So within mental health is mental fitness. And mental fitness is the thing that we get wrong more than mental health, because most people are mentally healthy. You're only mentally unhealthy when, serious problems occur. But mental fitness is something you can actually work on. And content consumption is part of mental fitness. The more junk you consume, the more unmentally fit you become.
Well, it's interesting. There's a
shorter
book.
attention spans.
What?
Shorter attention spans.
What? There's a really brilliant author called Abigail Schreier, and she's written a book called Bad Therapy, which is shooting up the charts in America at the moment. I heard an interview with her the other day. She wrote a book before this called Irreversible Damage, which is about like the trance phenomenon.
She sounds quite doom and gloomish.
No, she's actually really cool.
Okay.
And brave, because she's taking on subjects which people are extremely touchy and sensitive about, right? They're like, no, you can't mess with this. It's a sacred cow. And in Bad Therapy, the subtitle is Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up. And it's kind of how the whole therapy and mental health and antidepressant and all of that universe that's grown up around that stuff is actually making people less happy and less capable of dealing with life. All of that is inhibiting their ability to deal with stuff.
And I think a lot of the times it's because so many people want to find out, you want an excuse as to why you're feeling the way you are.
Yeah.
So we're looking for diagnosis, but we're not looking further than that. So we're going, oh, I have ADHD, and then leaving it alone. We're not putting in the work to get over it. We just mope around going, I have this, but we're not getting, I just spat all over. Sorry, Borge.
Jesus,
right.
What's wrong with you?
It's an age thing.
Spitting all over. What are you like? Adolf Hitler bursting into Ernst Röhm's room with a whip, spit flecked and
very
shouting and ranting.
Very passionate about this.
Unbelievable.
But yeah, we're not taking it to the next step. So we're just going, oh, I'm depressed. We're not fixing it.
And this woman makes a similar argument when it comes to mental fitness and emotional regulation. Under mental health, it's okay to feel any way you like.
Yeah.
But under mental fitness, you've got to actually do things to emotionally regulate yourself rather than just giving in to the feeling.
Yeah, I know we're going to sound very old if we go this way, but if you went to your parents as a kid, and we all had different parents, I don't know how your parents necessarily responded to you, but
didn't
if you
yours burn you with cigarettes?
Chuck me with a slipper.
If you went to your parents as a kid and you were like, Mom, I'm depressed, how would that have gone?
I don't know if they would have understood.
What would they have done? Would they said you go outside and
play in the sun,
play or something, right? I mean, my parents were definitely, and I'm often accused of being very unkind about the way that my parents raised me, because I tend to think I was raised like a wolf. But I do believe they did me an enormous service, because there wasn't a lot of room for sympathy. Like I remember once I broke my arm and my mother said, I'm going to break your other arm because you're just trying to miss tennis today or whatever.
Yeah.
I was like, well, okay, harden the fuck up. And I don't think that you can be unsympathetic and horrible. But I also think like these days, parents are trying to be so soft and so understanding, and their little darlings can't do anything wrong, that they're actually doing them a massive disservice in the long run, because they have no coping mechanism for anything other than comfort. right? Like, unless you are happy and comfortable all the time, which is pretty much impossible if you're a living, breathing, sentient human, to be happy and comfortable all the time, that's a mental weirdness.
Yeah.
And to learn to cope with stuff is actually really good. So less sympathy might not be the worst medicine.
So, I mean, at AutoTrader, the way we deal with being empathetic, we've tried to develop formulas around these things, or should I say processes around them, is if somebody has depression, family issue, or even, has had trauma of some kind.
Sure.
Okay. The business and the leaders in the business need to show empathy. I think that's important. You got to show empathy.
I would have a trap door, and the person would fall into it onto spikes, like in Jabba the Hutt in Star Wars. It'd be eaten by a rancor. Is that not what you do?
We just push the trap door a little bit further out.
Oh,
okay. So what I mean by that is, you got to show empathy, and but there's a limit. And I think that's probably what you're looking for is there's a limit to the empathy, and the limit is demonstrated in, okay, we're here for you, send you for counseling, send you for
sessions. You guys do. Well, that's amazing.
Yeah. So we try and help, but in that help, the trapdoor is we need to see progress. If we don't see progress, sorry.
I think that's very good. I mean, I'm not joking. I do have a trap door, and we've tried to get a rancor, but I think they've all died. I don't know.
I remember we had a conversation. I was speaking to you from my hospital bed, and I had bronchitis and pneumonia. And
you were meant to be on the show?
I'd lost my voice.
Oh.
And you were starting up. I think I'd moved up from Cape Town, and you said to me, why don't you consider coming back to Cliff Central? And I said yes, but then I got horribly ill and I was in hospital for almost 2 weeks. And you eventually said to me, I need an answer. When are you coming back? And I was lying there with machines on me going, I'm really sick. You're going, well, I need to know by the end of the week.
No sympathy, huh? Wow. Okay. This is painting me in a very bad light. So a couple of comments from people here about their parents and what they would have said. You want to cry, says Congo Chris? I'll give you something to cry about.
I remember those comments.
Rolene says, my dad would have said something. I'll give you something to be depressed about.
There we go.
This is the great parents of the Gen X generation.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
Zero sympathy. Wow, this will make me look smart with my family mental illness, says Sango. Grace says, have you seen those kids at American universities that have formed encampments for Palestine, yet they know nothing about the conflict or the region? Hilarious. Yeah, but that's also like a little bit, Bill Maher did a great monologue on how so much of this stuff is just, look at me, pay attention to me also, me. It doesn't matter whether it's Ukraine, Gaza, Afghanistan, whatever it might be, animal rights, the environment, whatever it is. It's like me, pay attention to me. That's so much of what we see now. So yes. And then Congo Chris also says this, which is a great saying. I've heard it before, but I like it. A ship is the safest in the harbor, but that's not what ships are made for.
That's true.
So the parents who try to keep the kids safe.
Water.
Yeah, I think that's very good.
Water.
Yeah, you know what? Sometimes we can be so critical of how our parents brought us up. We can see it both ways. So, for instance, I remember, I was left with the frozen peas, and that's what I was going to...
Yeah, you've been traumatized about that for years.
Where my mom left me in a pram at the frozen peas in I don't know what it was in those days, and drove away. And forgot about me completely.
I was expecting something less...
It's quite dramatic.
Less dramatic.
Yeah.
And then I remember...
it still bothers her 100 years later.
Yeah. And then I remember saying to her, Mom, why did you cotton me? What's it called? Wrap me in cotton wool when you were going through your divorce, because now I'm going through the same thing and no one told me it was this tough. So we can be critical either way.
Yeah,
we'll just spin our own story.
I mean, we do give parents a lot of shit on this show, but we also cut them a lot of slack because it's an imperfect science. Like you're a dad, George, and you don't know whether you're doing the right thing or the wrong thing some of the time. And there isn't a guidebook that gives you a definite answer for what the right way to do something is.
you're dealing with a human that you can't predict.
Exactly.
You can't predict.
This is the hardest thing.
But I think I think there's some studies around this, but the adults of today that are over the age of 40 or 45, because of the way we were brought up, we're actually competing with the youngsters quite successfully.
You mean we're winning?
Because we're tougher.
Yeah. But again, all I care about is, are we winning?
Well, I mean, just look at what the world's made up of. But we're tougher. All of the biggest companies in the world today, Google, I mean, not Google so much, but SpaceX, Tesla.
I've never had SpaceX. Can't wait.
Apple.
Right.
All of those people are over 40 or 45, even 55.
Huh.
And it's I think it's because of the way we were brought up. It was tougher. People had to go to the army.
Mm.
Yeah, that's true. I'm very happy with all of that. I also don't think I've ever looked back on my life and thought my parents were shit at this or whatever.
Mm-mm.
Like, I know there are people who have serious issues with their parents, and I feel sorry for them. I feel sorry for their parents too, because they might just be horrible assholes. But so what? What are you going to do? It's done, right? Like, are you going to sit and dwell and go round and round, navel gaze, think about how it could have been, would have been, should have been?
No.
What are you doing? Move on.
Ain't nobody got time for that.
Nobody. And actually, the big realization is going to be no one cares. Where?
Mm.
So there's our session for the morning. You listen to Dr. Hanan in the first hour and me in the second hour. It'll change your whole perspective. I mean, you'll go through the gamut, right? Now we have helicopter parenting, says Congo Chris. Back in the day, it used to be shotgun parenting.
Yes.
Squeeze out 20 kids, hope enough survive to keep the farm or family business going.
But also the absolute horror of seeing your mom at school for some reason. Would be like, what are you doing here?
Yeah.
Get out.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
Well, I know.
You didn't want your mom being in the tuck shop.
Yeah. Oh, no. Hell no. You didn't want any connection to home while you were at school.
Yeah, because you were busy being tough and fending for yourself.
You were like, this is where I can be,
Yeah.
the main guy.
Mm.
Well, you get home and say, how was your school day, darling? It was very nice, thanks, Mom. what do you want in your lunchbox? Well, whatever you got. Okay.
Maybe that's where multiple personalities come from.
Maybe. And you know what? You can't be the same with everybody. And people aren't. Everybody who says like you've got to be completely consistent all the time. I try to be, because it's harder to remember two versions of everything. But I would be lying to you if I didn't say I'm different around very old people to how I am around young people. I'd be lying to you if I said that I was completely different, if I was the same in front of my very good friends and people I've just met. Of course, you have to modify your behavior, but I don't think that's schizophrenic.
I don't think it's schizophrenic.
No, it's survival.
I think what's probably going on there is as we age, we become more authentic. I feel much more authentic now than I was 10 years ago.
Yeah, you're still trying to people please and all that stuff.
But how I bring that authenticity to bear is different for different people. I'll be tougher with Gareth versus Leigh-Ann, but the content will be the same.
Right. No. I think that's very good. That's exactly why I'm looking forward to being the cranky old man. It's going to be so much fun. I mean, imagine me with even less filter.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just going to be devastating, right?
They're going to have to look. They're going to have to watch you very carefully in an old age home.
Just put me straight into jail now. Rolene says, I'm stronger today because of my parents, but they were never bad. It was very fair.
Mm.
I think that's also a thing. So I heard something interesting yesterday, that apparently the great apes, so all of our closest,
like the bonobo,
all of our closest animal relatives, so the orangutans, the bonobos, the gorillas, the chimpanzees, they apparently have a very low tolerance for unfairness.
Mm.
Oh.
And
how do they judge that?
Well, so there was this guy who had a pet chimp. Okay, and then he sent the chimp to one of those rehabilitation centers where it could be socialized with other chimps, because he felt like it was wrong to have a pet chimp.
Yeah.
And he decided it must be with other chimps, must learn to be a chimp. It mustn't be a pet anymore. And then for its birthday one year, he brought it a cake. And he gave it a cake and not the other chimps. And he was in the enclosure and they ripped him limb from limb, the person, the human. These chimps do not like favoritism.
Wow.
No.
Okay.
And
yeah.
They like to rip humans apart.
They love to rip a human, face ripper, balls ripper. I mean, also they do that because male chimps especially need to disarm a male threat to their dominance, right? So they will immediately go for the genitals, which emasculates you.
Yeah.
They will go for the arms and the legs so you can't fight back. And they don't really care about they're not going to eat the torso or whatever. But once they've ripped off all of those things, you're not going to last very long anyway.
So like, go
and they're very strong. But they have a genuine dislike of unfairness.
Interesting.
So I said to the person who told this to me, therefore they're communists. So he said, yeah, probably. So if apes can be communists, shouldn't we try and do better?
Yeah.
And speaking of socialism, I saw something very cool just this morning. I like this a lot. It's a very short, sweet debunking of socialism. Number one, if socialism worked, all the socialists could just meet up, put all of their wealth into a pot, and divide it equally among themselves. But this has never happened. Right? Like, you could be a through and through socialist. You find other socialists who are just like you. They really believe that stuff. I want to see just a small group of them, a manageable group, 10. 10 socialists get together, put everything you own, cash, jewelry, cars, houses, whatever it is, into the pot, and then divide it equally. When you guys can get that right with 10 people, then we'll take you seriously as a political movement.
Yeah.
And until that happens, I don't believe you. But I do think that thing with the great apes is fascinating because it does tell you a little bit about what our genetic predispositions might be. We don't like unfairness and we don't like favoritism.
Unless you're the one being favorited.
Well, I mean,
favored.
We don't know how the chimp who got the cake felt. He must have felt pretty full of himself.
Yeah.
But they didn't take it out on the chimp. They took it out on the person who was being, you know.
But what do they call a gaggle of chimps?
I don't know.
I think it's you want to say school, but it's not.
Anyway, if it's even a school of chimps.
Yeah, collective noun chimps.
Yeah,
Leigh-Ann is our
different
language
chimps,
expert on the show. And our on-the-spot fact checker.
It's a it's a whoop.
A whoop of chimps.
Whoop of chimps.
A whoop of chimps. So in a whoop of chimps, right?
Is
it like a pride?
Really
is it
The collective noun for a group of chimpanzees is a whoop.
a whoop? Okay.
Or a cartload, a group, a harem, a troop, and a whoop.
A troop. Troop sounds good.
A troop, I'm pretty sure
Troop,
is the
So in a troop of chimps, is it like a lion pride where if you don't pull your weight, you get kicked out? Okay.
I think primates are a little bit more sophisticated. I don't know. I mean, this is where there's a really interesting book I'll give you if you're into this, George, which I haven't read, but it's sitting on my shelf waiting to be read. And it's about what we can learn from apes.
So my point is really...
and it goes into a lot of the detail around
detail.
how they socially arrange themselves.
I'm
what
pretty
they do,
sure you can't be in a troop of chimps.
and not pull your weight.
Okay, so
I know
think,
where you're going with this.
Like they wouldn't tolerate laziness.
Yes.
Yeah.
So the definition of fairness is only within a troop of chimps that are pulling their weight.
Okay.
They're going outside and getting cake.
They don't care about you.
They don't care about you. You can die for all they care.
Yeah. And I think that's very human too. I mean, we really don't like someone who's just a parasite. Someone who, like, by the way, speaking of parasites, the collective noun for baboons is a parliament. A parliament of baboons.
It's much more intelligent than a whoop.
Yeah, baboon troops will kick out young rogue males. They're eventually allowed to come back, but in their time away, if it resulted in no change of behavior, they're kicked out permanently.
Geez, so they give them another chance.
So that's my point about fair.
Okay.
Fair is not equal.
Yes. Yes, that's a very good point.
And in business and capitalism, fair is not equal.
No. I mean, you can treat people fairly, but You can even treat them. You can even treat them equally, but it doesn't mean that you'll have equal outcomes.
Yes.
I think that's probably where we're headed on this. Friends who are under 25 or so say that the discipline I received, says Rochelle on our former discussion, when growing up borders on child abuse, but I'm grateful for it because comparatively I'm way more resilient in tough situations.
Yeah, it's true.
Tough.
I mean,
Tough. The people our age are tough.
I remember my brother phoning Childline the once, and my mum grabbed the phone from him and said, "If you think he's crying now," and slammed the phone
I mean,
down.
now you'd have someone would come and remove you.
Yeah, they would.
Oh, yeah.
You know, and if I were a child and I threatened my parents with that, I would have got a hiding.
I would have been grounded.
Big hiding. Unbelievable. No alpha male apes will keep weak males around to display dominance. Wrong. Weak males don't get kicked. It's not like lions, says Green Copy. No, but I know that, for example, there's no such thing as a successful beta male in any species except in humans. And by successful, we mean they occasionally get laid, but they use sneaky tactics to get that done. Beta males.
I know a few of those.
Yeah, they're the worst, right? Everybody dislikes and distrusts them with good reason. Judas says, I grew up apart from both of my parents, but I learned from a very, very early age about owning up to my actions. Parents can give guidance and advice, but the actions come from the individual. Yeah, I suppose you have to be responsible for your own decisions.
Take accountability. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
A parliament of baboons, says Mapello, is more intelligent than the South African parliament. Well, it's a photo finish. Let's put it that way. I just love this stuff. A parliament of owls is also correct. So
owls are called Parliament of Owls.
Yeah, yeah. So there's the good and the less good.
Yeah, talking about owls in our area, there's a catch and release program.
Oh yeah,
for owls and bats. So in our area, we've gotten these two organizations.
Your area specializes in nocturnal animals.
Yeah,
George's neighborhood is principally for nocturnal animals. All the diurnal animals know not to go there if something happens.
Don't come. And these people they take rehabilitated owls and release them into areas that want them released. And I saw one the other night.
I think owls are wonderful.
Oh, I love them.
The only problem, and you can Google this on your own after the show as your homework, only problem with owls is if you look at one when its feathers have been plucked, like they've got, some in museums. And I don't advise people to go around and pluck owls' feathers.
No.
But if you look at what they look like without feathers, they are truly the most terrifying alien-looking things imaginable.
They've got the
Their
longest
legs come up to here.
Really?
It's
a feather.
George.
Yeah.
I'm going to Google this.
Like an owl's a beautiful looking bird, right? But without feathers.
Do you remember we had a baby owl come to the studios before?
It did once, yeah. We had all kinds of animals. Don't you remember in the beginning of Cliff Central, there were cheetahs in the studio one day? Yeah. You did your show on a Friday, didn't you?
Yeah.
We had cheetahs even before that in the bowels of the SABC.
Can you imagine how that frightened the security guards?
I took cheetahs for a walk once, about 15 years ago, on the garden route. You can go and you can actually walk cheetahs on a leash. There's two guides with you with rifles,
right? In case
you misbehave,
you get a 30-minute talk before you take these cheetahs for a walk. And these cheetahs are, in the studio you would have known they're big. And there's rules. Don't bend down.
Yeah.
Don't make sudden movements.
You're not supposed to touch their
you couldn't touch them. You couldn't touch
or
them
their
at all.
face.
You could just hold the leash and walk them, and they walked fine. If you make a sudden movement that looks like you're going to run, they will attack you.
Yeah, because it's like chasing a piece of wool.
It's instinctive.
Yeah.
I was terrified.
And cheetahs are the least dangerous of the big cats,
for
right?
humans.
I mean, they're probably the ones who are most docile and able to interact with us without eating us.
Yeah, leopards aren't going to stand. You're not going to stand a chance.
Oh, can't take that guy for a walk.
No,
He'll take you for a walk.
Yeah, they'll disembowel you just because you look
all
at
while
them
looking
funny.
beautiful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. All right. Well, listen. I'm afraid This has gone so
Jeez.
quickly this morning.
George, we didn't even talk about like cars and
We
stuff.
didn't talk about cars at all.
I had too much fun.
Well, you can still get the AutoTrader podcast, which you can find on all the good podcast catchers. It's also on YouTube, and we will be we'll be doing more cool stuff with George coming up. But it's always lovely to have you in, and it's like a fun breakfast party where people just join us. And if you joined us this morning, if you're new to the show, welcome. I mean, we haven't said that for a while because we may have a whole new group of people who come in now just to see what we're doing. And you're welcome to stay unless you're very irritating, in which case we'll be happy to kick you out.
Love the
like
new
a
studio.
troop of baboons. Thanks, George.
Love the new studio.
Thanks.
It feels more real on the Real Network.
You think?
Yeah, no headphones.
Yeah. So we
Makes
can
a big
actually
difference.
concentrate on the conversation.
The conversation
right?
feels like a fireside conversation.
I'm not
It's-
doing all the things.
You're not
I mean, do you
playing
remember how
piano,
many things? I was
like an orang-utang
I was like an orang-utang at
Yeah.
the controls.
or a
before.
gibbon.
Yeah, with those long arms, like a gibbon. And the headphones and the mics and the... So who needs it?
This
right?
is a lot better.
Okay, very exciting. That's enough for today. Go and talk amongst yourselves. We'll see you tomorrow at 6 a.m. Bye-bye.